Hello, and welcome to the House of Kanaz podcast. I'm Steven, and I'm recording this on February 23rd, 2026. And astrologically speaking, we are in the middle of what people typically call eclipse season. And during eclipse season, this is a time in which it often feels like the fast forward button is being pressed on the global stage. And there's a lot of news that is appearing regarding the leaders of the world, leaders of groups and so forth. Okay. However, this eclipse season is quite different. Well, the reason why is that we are also experiencing what's called the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, which I believe that I've mentioned previously before, but this actually happened just a few days ago. It became mathematically, it was an exactitude a few days ago. And that in combination with the eclipses, I think is really it is the difficulty of the times. It is the signal of the times. And then this is where I want to start off with today. Because the past few weeks have been very intense. Okay. When it comes to the Saturn Neptune conjunction, Saturn in astrology deals with our bones. It deals with our reality. It deals with structure. Daddy is, has like this daddy vibe, right? Saturn is like this daddy responsibility, reality, the hard facts, that kind of thing. Neptune gets to be a little bit more dreamy. Neptune rules film, it rules art. It also rules drugs, illusions, fantasy, imagination, right? And there's pros and cons to both of these planets. But at the moment, I believe, if you look at the Epstein files, I think is like the perfect encapsulation of what this conjunction is doing to us, like on an energetic level. The files is the manifestation of this conjunction. What I mean by that is that in one way, you could think about the files as being like a physical thing. And our ideas about reality being Neptune, the files being Saturn, we're having to juggle the two at the moment. We're having to juggle or kind of come to grips with what really is going on here. What really is reality? What are our leaders really working towards? What are they supporting? This is what I think the files are doing. This is at least they present this opportunity, and this is at least what I have been struggling with for the past few weeks as I have spent time going through those files. It has been such an energetic weight that I feel you like I do think it's part of our responsibility to honor the victims, to understand what is going on there. And I thought before I did research, before I spent hours, days doing that research, I thought I knew what the boundaries of that whole um thing were. Then there's like a few documents that I found that like really haunt me that I still like I've been thinking about every day. And there's this file that are journal entries from this woman who I believe was just being held captive and had her baby taken from her. And she didn't know where her baby was taken to and so forth. And, you're reading I'm reading these files and, you can feel the pain. You can feel the sense of hopelessness, the sense of like utter despair as you are reading this. It's so dark. And then for there to then start popping up these code words of jerky. There's so much reference to jerky in the files. Jerky that needs to be frozen. And I'm like, is this what's actually happening? And I have been struggling, like honestly, for like weeks now to be like, is that indeed that was part of this as well? And that they then were talking about cream cheese in regards to this film that babies have after they're born. Like again, I had no idea that it went that far. And I probably should have warned you that this, is going to go here, but just this whole idea around like he essentially had this farm in which he was holding women captive, and then I think it was partly eugenics, but also partly just like breeding babies for like energy harvest, harvesting energy. And I do think that there is a lot of metaphysics in what Jeffrey Epstein was doing. I don't know how studied he was in the field, but I do think that a lot of what he was doing was working with energy. I do think that he was feeding off of people's fear. I think that fear gave him a sense of power. And I think that from that power, things just kind of built on top of it. But I do think that there is some like energy play. I shouldn't say even play here because I don't want to be disrespectful to all those victims, but I do think that there is something here in which he's really abusing people, not just on a physical level, on a spiritual, energetic, like it's so many levels of abuse that he is abusing them. It is sickening. Um, I'm still trying to grapple with this, and I think that is the era. That is the era that we are in, is trying to understand what has been going on and what has our government been allowing to exist, and this idea that like the CEO of the photo service that schools would use, right? He would just send Epstein just like the school photos, and Epstein would just like select them. The fact that Epstein also was connected to the fashion industry through like the limited and like through women's clothing and things like that. Like and then on top of that, like he's part of 4chan. Glenn is on Reddit. They are, they are, they have, infiltrated so many parts of the culture. They have created, I think, they have helped engineer the culture wars. And they have also helped shape the direction of the culture of women's fashion to become, to push women to dress like girls, like it kind of, it's just so sickening. I pause it. Life Touch. Life Touch is the name of the company that would take photos at schools. And then they would send photos of children to Jeffrey Epstein. And with those photos, he also had access to um, their addresses, right? Like the school photos had, when you ordered school photos, you also had to give them your address. So you start wondering, like, you start connecting the dots and being like, oh, like that's really nefarious, you know, to think that basically the organizations taking the school photos were part of this ring of, like Jeffrey Epstein or whoever, part of that cohort could just select the kids that then they want to target and kidnap. Like it's just blowing my mind. And again, this is for entertainment purposes only. Um, but I do believe that many other people, especially when I look at TikTok, many other people are also like just struggling with this of like, what the fuck is going on? What is reality? Why is this allowed? Why are we allowing this to exist? Why isn't there justice as we see in other countries? And I do think that other countries are leading the way. They are showing the way of how to be an adult. And I do think that that is like a beacon of light of seeing how other countries like the UK just a few days ago arrested Prince Andrew. Again, it's this eclipse season type of story of um, someone who was in a position of power, losing power. Now he's arrested, like it's in other countries like Norway, for instance. So I think Americans can see, like, okay, accountability is being held in other places. Why can't we have it here? And I think that that's a reasonable question for us to be thinking about. Now, later this week, again, I'm filming this on the 23rd, and I believe the thing I am going to be talking about is happening on Friday. Let me just quickly, yeah, Thursday, Friday. I do think, though, likely we might even see it on Tuesday, the 24th, is that we're having Mars square Uranus. Now, again, Mars is a faster moving planet. When we're talking about the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, both Saturn and Neptune are slower moving planets. So that's been something that we have been feeling probably for about a year or so, give or take like a few months. if you want to be more judicious about it and be like, okay, like maybe within a 3-degree orb, we've been feeling it um, for let me just calculate it for you. But I think that it's been operative for a few months at least. Um, and it will be operative for until like April or May. It's going to be pretty close. So it's really like the Saturn Neptune, this try to grapple with what is reality, what do we want, what do we want to actually work towards. It's also about um Neptune is like the ocean. It's going to erode any structure that is decaying, right? Like the last time that Saturn Neptune conjunction happened was when the Berlin Wall came down. Okay, and I think that's the perfect representation of this. It is the fall of um, of governments that have met their end. Essentially, it is the structures um, that can't withstand a hurricane collapse. That is what the Saturn Neptune conjunction is about, and that basically that conjunction we've been feeling it since the beginning of 2026, since day one, January 1st of 2026. We will feel it until it's going to be really operative until like the end of April, end of May, right? So it's really the first half of the year, you could say, that this is really like we're trying to figure out what is really going on. Okay. Then this week we have one of the firecracker events that is the Mars square Uranus, which I was going to talk about, but then I went on a little tangent. Um, called ADHD. So I have this book that I decided to whip out called Planets in Transit. And again, transits are when we are focused on the planets in their current position in the sky. And so this is like a great little cookbook, so to speak, of how the planets in the sky, how to relate them to planets, perhaps like on your natal chart, like how they're relating to your natal chart. Anyway, I wanted to read to you what Robert Hand writes about Mars square Uranus. He says, this transit represents a time of great restlessness and impulsiveness. Like all the Mars Uranus transits, this one means that you want to be free of all restraints and you may rebel quite actively against restrictions. It is also a time when you are challenged as to whether you can be yourself and whether you can periodically renew your life so that it doesn't become completely stale. Your goal now should be to create a situation of ongoing creative change in your life so that you don't have to create either a sudden or and total revolution or live with a situation that doesn't change at all. Don't wait until circumstances have become totally intolerable before you try to reform them. If you do, you will exhibit the worst attributes of this transit: impulsiveness, rashness, and complete disregard for your obligations. Authority figures in close relationships, especially old ones from the past, are most likely to be the objects of your revolt. I say that because as I've been studying astrology and studying how world events map on to astrology, Mars often brings violence when it makes certain contacts to Pluto and Uranus. And this square, I do believe, is going to bring violence. Now, yesterday, February 22nd, there was a lot of violence happening in Mexico, all across Mexico with cartels. And I think that there's still like a lot of information to understand, but the head of one of the cartels that was responsible for um, trafficking a lot of drugs to a lot of Western nations, he was murdered, and there have been consequences now all across Mexico. And when you look at those videos that are coming out now, that is the representation of Mars square Uranus, where so Uranus is kind of something really unexpected. It's like out of the blue, it's like a flash, like a lightning bolt. And Mars is kind of how we move through the world. It is you could say Mars rules war, Mars rules aggression, right? So it's this like unexpected aggression. It's this unexpected conflict. And just seeing buses and buildings, businesses on fire, right? This is the representation of Mars and Uranus. And this is going to be something that is active this week. So the week of the 22nd of February. It's going to be really strong. So I do think that there's going to be um, more violence. I would be surprised if it didn't escalate. Let me say that. I do think that there's going to be more violence, whether it's there or whether whatever is being planned or thought of around Iran or other places, because at the moment, the world is very unstable. Again, that is the vibe of the Saturn Neptune. That is what we are dealing with. And again, the Saturn Neptune is at 0 degrees. I keep bringing this up, but this is something I've been thinking about for 5 fucking years. So to be living through it now, it's quite interesting just because it is something that, since I started studying astrology, and I've been focusing on this year of 2026 for 5 years. I have been preparing for this for 5 years. And I have been, and I'll give offhanded comments to people of like, what are you gonna, are you preparing? Did you buy a gun? Do you have cash? Are you growing your food? Where are you getting your food? Do you have connections to a farmer? Um, I start asking like practical questions like, do you have a stock of whole grains? Do you have dried beans? Do you have food for at least a month? Do you have cash so that you can go to the grocery store in case the electronic um, checkouts are not working? In case the you can't use your credit card, right? Like again, there are a lot of things that we take for granted, and we saw we saw what happened in Venezuela. The US government was able to shut down the the, the electricity, the grid, essentially, and take a leader. One, we have to we have to wonder what other countries can do to us, but we also have to wonder what our own government can do to ourselves. We have to be prepared to be able to survive, or at a minimum survive if need be. And I'm not saying that the worst is going to happen, but I do think that with the Saturn Neptune, it is about structures eroding, and that there is going to be instability. It could be that, we may, I've certainly lost power in a past few months, where like I didn't have power for like a whole day, right? So if I wanted to go buy something, I wouldn't be able to with my credit card. So it's just things like that where I'm like, I'm not saying that the whole system's going to crash forever. I'm saying, like there might be, a period of time, maybe it's a day, maybe it's a week, where certain systems that we take for granted may not be up and running. Things may not be accessible. And again, to bring this back to COVID, I think during COVID, people were watching it go through China, and then people were watching it go through Europe, and they're like, it's not going to come here. And I just remember people being like they had their American exceptionalism, you know, with their American exceptionalism, they refused to recognize the true reality of the situation, which was that it was already here, right? And I think that there is just so much discontent in the general populace that the probability of some instability happening in the country is very high to me. Like it's something where like again, I've only made plans to go on one vacation, and that vacation plan is very tentative. I very rarely ever buy like travel insurance. I bought all the insurance on that, and so I could easily cancel it out. And I don't know what's going to happen. Um, and sometimes I feel when I bring this up to other people, I don't want to scare them, but I also want to talk about it. I want to know where they are, because are they are they processing what's going on? Like the idea that the average American, and let's say that we talk about like the average person who's in their 20s, right? It seems more and more difficult for them to be able to get a job, right? To get a job either in their field, they are applying to so many jobs. So imagine if you are just applying to all these jobs, you can't find one. The Epstein files, you're going through the Epstein files, you are getting more and more disgruntled with the situation and the fact that your tax dollars are in some ways like funding the system. One thing is going to lead to another, which is going to lead to another, right? You see the domino effect. Do you not? And again, this is only for entertainment purposes only. Um, but I have a hard time believing that, there's only so long that the general populace can stay discontented. And you know, whether that is why they are producing more and more camps, perhaps that's what's going on. Um, I don't know. I do think that we are at this juncture where we have to take the responsibility to break out of our compliance in the system, however that may be. And I'll add this. So again, this week we had the Mars square Uranus. And then on July 3rd, that's when Mars will meet up with Uranus and they'll be in the same position. So I do think that July 4th could be a really tense day. I am not thinking like again, what's happening in Mexico, I think is so it's so sad. Like I do feel the fact that like just it seems like businesses, random things are just being targeted and burned down. Like that is something like that is so sad. And I also feel like when I see that, could that happen in America? I think I, I think that there is a rage that is building that where I look at those images and sure we may not have cartels like that in America, but there is rage in which like the LA riots in the 90s where something could just be boiling up to such a level in which there's like a frenzied reaction. Yeah, I don't know. I truly don't know what's going to happen. The thing is that this period of time, the end of February, this is one of the critical times of the year in which it's like a flashbang. Okay. Then we have the middle of April, April 14th, 15th, 16th. There's this period of time in which we're going to have like seven planets in Aries. And again, Aries is fire, it's like lighting a match, it is creation, something starting. And when I see that, I'm like, who knows what's going to happen then? But there's going to be, I would be surprised if something interesting in quotes, um, doesn't happen in the middle of April. Okay. And then this July 3rd, July 4th time period, really the beginning of July, is like another flash pan where again we have these opportunities where like depending on how we use the energy, we could be pushing into very unexpected directions. It doesn't have to be violence. It's just like my mind goes to violence because when you're talking about the general population, that's what's going to happen. Like you as an individual, you might unexpectedly, discover meditation and like start uh, applying a different way of carrying yourself. But most people are not doing that work, right? So most people, when they are met with something that is opposing them, the reaction is violence. So that's where, when I'm talking about the world stage, I have to choose the lowest level there. Um, yeah. So anyway, I want to change the subject. I've had enough of that. So, on another note, I'm obsessed. If you're watching the video, I'm obsessed with this cowboy hat that I recently purchased. And I did not think I would be that into it, but I just saw it on the website and it was on sale. And I was like, you know what? I've always wanted a cowboy hat. I'm gonna get it. And I cannot stop wearing it. And it's my new thing. It's my new thing. So I say that in to inspire you to find small things that bring you joy, even if it's a fucking stupid material thing, right? Something that you're just like, oh, like I kind of like that. There's nothing wrong in finding joy in something so small and something that maybe helps you either explore another aspect of your identity or you just, maybe you just like the way it looks. Nothing wrong with that. So that's one thing. Another thing is what am I reading? At the moment, I am reading this book of Uranus by Jeffrey Wolfgrain. And again, I always have like one astrology book that I'm currently working through. And this is like a really nice book in that part of it's like a lecture that he gave that is just like transcribed. And he does a really good job of talking about Uranus and the different depending on where it is in your natal chart, how its representation, as it's transiting, like the aspects that it may be making and how that may manifest in your life. There's a chapter that I was reading today about the different traumas that one may encounter as Uranus is going through different houses or different signs. And I thought that was really interesting. And then he actually provided similar chapters for Saturn, for Neptune, and for Pluto. And I really thought that everything that he was everything like there are things that he wrote that were so pertinent to me. And I'm going to just share something that I was reading earlier today, and it's connected to my second book. And this is actually about Neptune, and it's not about Uranus. So this section is about Neptune either being in your third house, in Gemini, or aspecting Mercury, or the ruler of your third house. And what he wrote here, I thought really describes like really well things that I'm going through. He says, an idealistic expectation linked with an inherent knowledge that there is a much larger reality than what is perceived or known by the logical, rational mind, and that others should understand and know this too. A frustration wherein their own inner expectation to be able to intellectualize or put into logical mental sequence that which is inwardly sensed can exist. The experience of a limited language, as spoken by most of the people around them, is that which frustrates their efforts to communicate that which is essentially incommunicable. It is as if these individuals are tuned into a radio station that no one else can hear. Disillusioned by their efforts to communicate in ways and about things that no one else seems to understand, can generate a spiritual or psychic trauma wherein these people can simply give up all efforts to act communicating and to inwardly withdrawal to the point of total reclusion. Anyway, I feel like what he writes there is part of the reason why I started this podcast or this project is there are things that I have spent my whole life trying to communicate, and I just got so sick of bringing up these topics to people and they just like looking at me as if I had three heads and then quickly changed the subject to um such a superficial topic. And it that has happened so many times in my life. And you know, I just could not deal with it anymore. And I couldn't approach it the same way that I was approaching it. And so I decided, okay, I'm gonna just fucking start a podcast and maybe people, maybe I'm talking to no one. Maybe no one's fucking listening to this. That's a possibility. Um, but maybe people that are into this are going to listen. And maybe they're gonna get something out of it. Maybe they hear something that they haven't thought of before. Maybe it opens up their mind a little bit, right? Or maybe they have had similar interests and they realize, oh, there are other people out there who are into this as well. And at least that is my goal, is to build community, to have um the realization, the sense, whatever, that you're not alone. Anyway, on that note, and connected to what was written here, I'm also taking a course currently on channeling. And so I'm reading this book on channeling called Channeling by John Climo. And I'm about like halfway through it. Um, and I had this experience yesterday. My classes are on Sunday, which is exactly what that paragraph was describing, where in class we do, like usually it's like 30-40 minutes or whatever of a lecture. And then, there's a lot of discussions, questions, and then there's a guided meditation portion. Um, and so during my guided meditation portion yesterday, one thing that I have been really practicing or honing in a lot is visualization. Is also similar to what that paragraph was talking about. Is like um not just visualization, but also like clairaudience. So just like um hearing things that no one else is hearing. And however, like when I'm in these meditations, at least where I typically start, or at least one place that I get to before I start seeing something that resembles more of this 3D world, is that I see a lot of colors. It's very psychedelic. Like if you remember um in the 90s, there was this app, and I shouldn't even call it app. There's this program called Win App. I think it was called Win App. Anyway, you would play like MP3s on this, and then you could choose this kind of like psychedelic, um, like kind of screensaver kind of thing that would play in sync with the music. Anyway, that is what I see when I close my eyes. And when I go through these meditations, it is very vibrant. I see more colors. I see, like I my body moves in a way that is like I'm like a tree kind of flowing in the wind. And I have a very hard time describing what it is that I am going through when I'm in that space. I don't have words for it. I very much enjoy it. I'm very much um, in a great space. I'm very much feeling connected to something. But other than that, um, no. Now, there are times where I go into a meditative space and it is like I get images that are very clear. Like, for instance, I last week, last Tuesday, I always go to bed with a white noise machine on. And the white noise machine is in a different room. And um, I lay down. Sometimes I just hear the white noise machine. Let's say like 25% of the time, I will hear music. I will hear like jazzy kind of music. It's not a song I've ever heard before. It's not a song that like exists by an artist, but my brain puts together like I just hear music. Okay. Anyway, I went to bed last week and I heard the honking of a horn, like just um the image that I had was that this car was next to a building that blew up, and like this there was some signal in the car that just made it just honk. And then last night I was watching videos coming out of Mexico, and I saw a clip that it was like that's that's what I had heard days before. And that to me, like that's kind of normal for me. Like I often have dreams of the future. I hear things. I just know things. Um, and it can be difficult. I've also realized in the past year, like how much this has fucked up all my relationships, like this kind of just telepathy of knowing things before the other person knows them, and me processing that knowing before it happens or before the person has brought that up to their own consciousness. It causes a lot of conflict. I think that this is truly at the heart of all of my breakups, if I'm going to be honest. Um, and it is one reason, I've had a theory for the past few years of like, I don't think if I were to date, which again, like, I'm very wary of dating personally for me because of the energetic commitments that it takes. When I am dating someone, I'm connected to them in such a way that um I don't know how to connect in a way that is not like on that level of, oh, I think about them and then they're texting me a minute later. Okay. Or I'm having dreams with them and then they send me a message like, oh, I saw you in my dream, or something like that. Right. Like, and it gets to this like very much merging where I can lose myself in the relationship. And I, unless the person that I am partnering with is also aware of this and like psychically attuned and has good boundaries and understands um how to also hold boundaries, and I feel like I have done a good job, but there have been times where people still get connected to me in a way that I didn't want them to get connected to, and it just gets really complicated. Anyway, I'm still trying to. This is where I'm trying. What I'm how I'm trying to sort out. And to go back to this whole Mars Uranus thing, I have Mars conjunct Uranus in my chart, and it's really interesting just because it's like, again, in the world, this often brings about violence, and in my chart, it's in the seventh house, and it's certainly brings unexpected endings to many relationships. And it also introduces interesting dynamics in the bedroom in which like it is necessary. Like I cannot fathom having a relationship that like it's just like the standard white bread cookie cutter kind of relationship. I would be so bored out of my mind. Okay. So I think like I need to have someone who understands that dynamic. This like, again, ADHD of it all. Or like something that is out of the ordinary. Yeah. So that's life at the moment. Um let's do a little card reading. I feel like I've been all over this place. I did not prepare at all. I was just like, well, I feel like you need to talk. We're gonna see where it goes. And it went in a lot of different directions. And sometimes I gotta write it down, but sometimes I just want to talk it out. I am a Gemini rising. After all, all right. So again, it is February 23rd. for the next month, um, so again, we're going to be going through this Mars square Uranus. We're going to have the lunar eclipse on March 3rd. Then I think the rest of March is probably going to be a little bit less dramatic, but we're going to have to deal with the chaos of the world. Anyway, guidance. What what do we need to be thinking about? Let's see what we have. The Ace of Discs. So this is about the earth plane, the material plane. So this is about bringing in something new materially. So the start of something new materially. All right. Then we have the Eight of Swords, interference. This is a Jupiter in Gemini card. And so when I think about Jupiter and Gemini, Jupiter wants to expand. Gemini is, again, about thoughts. And when I think about Jupiter being there, it's like there's 20,000 different thoughts, and you want to have focus on every single one of them. You can't, right? And so that there's kind of this interference in that you can't actually get you can't focus on the thing that you're supposed to focus on because you want to focus on everything. And when you look at this card, there's like all of these different swords, but they're all different. They're all different thoughts. Um, so part of the trick here is, the news, everything, like there's so much news going on at the moment. Where do you put your focus? That's that is my interpretation here. Because we have to that is something that we do have control over, is where do we put our energy? Where do we put our focus? And again, as I was talking about before, the Epstein files, like, yeah, I think from an ethical standpoint, I want to honor the victims and I want to know what happened. But there's also some damage or some weight or there is a price that I pay by putting my focus on those files. It is not something I'm being paid for. It is not my life's work. It is interference, perhaps, from what I should be doing. Okay. Then we get the two of discs, the change card. This is a Jupiter in Capricorn card. Jupiter popping up again. So that's really interesting. So what I see here is in the change card, we have a snake. Right? So snakes, we just left the year of the snake. In 2025 was a year of snake. And again, when you think about snakes, you think about when a snake gets bigger, it leaves its skin behind. And so snakes are always representing transformation. Now, I still scream every time I'm walking in the woods and I see a snake. I can't help it. They freak the fuck out of me. I don't want to deal with snakes. But metaphorically speaking, it is a great idea to be like the snake and to transform and to evolve. Yes, we are changing and perhaps changing for the better. Jupiter again is about expansion. We are expanding. Yes. Okay. Interesting. Okay. The Seven of Cups. Okay. I have a weird connection to this card. This is why I said interesting, just because I remember doing a tarot poll a few hours before the last presidential election. It was before any votes were counted. It was like 5 p.m. Okay. And this, I think I pulled like two or three cards. This was one of the cards. And when I see this card, I always think about that because I always think about when I look at this card, it's a swamp. Okay. Drain the swamp. And this Seven of Cups is called the debauch card. This is not, again, cups are about water. This is not healthy looking water. This is water that has been, well, swamp water, essentially. And this is a Venus in Scorpio card. And when I think about Venus in Scorpio, I'm thinking about our deepest values. We are being asked to really inspect them. And I think the nation, with this current Saturn-Neptune thing, is also being asked about that because are our deepest values in alignment to how we are acting or moving through the world? Or are they in misalignment, as this picture may suggest? So, what this what does this all mean? I do think, looking at these cards, it's like a yo-yo in that we have these two cards. We have the Ace of Discs and the Two of Discs that are kind of suggesting something new. There's possibility for something new. Okay. But then these other two cards are kind of asking us, where do we want to put our attention? And again, the whole thing that I think we as a nation are having to grapple with is, what is it that we want for our future? Like, if we recognize that we are in the swamp, so to speak, we recognize that the values that we thought our leaders had, maybe they don't have. How can we do a better, how can we better assess our leaders so that we can better select them or make sure that they actually uphold the values that they say that they have and so forth. Um, so, in order for this to occur, and what I mean by this is the creation of something new, for there to be this transformation, we're going to have to inspect our values and also be able to wade through all of the different news that we are being bombarded with. It is, if you open up any news app or news website at the moment, there is so much news happening that, like, imagine just 20, 30 years ago, any one of those things would have been groundbreaking. Now we're at this point where, like, groundbreaking news is happening every hour. That can be so destabilizing. That can put you in a sense of shock. You're not going to be able to do anything if you are having to process, if you're taking the time to process groundbreaking news all the time. I do think that that is part of what I'm going through personally, is trying to understand how much I need to be informed. I used to listen to way more political content than I do now. I I have, I think, like, at the moment, one or two shows that I listen like weekly. And before that, it was several different shows I was listening almost daily. I have certainly um curtailed that. And also, one thing that I have changed is I've really introduced music back into the mix of things. As a teenager, I listened to music all the time. And last year, I bought a CD player and I just started playing my CDs again. And that that is magic. And you can create your own space. And again, the thing I have struggled with my whole life, because even as a kid, if something good was happening to me, I was told, well, what about the starving babies in Africa? That is the line that I was told as a child. Okay. Anytime I had something good going for me, it was just wiped away. And I think that part of my task, part of my journey at the moment, personally, if I'm going to speak personally, is to really embrace joy. I mean, like, this is one of the hardest things for me to do. And I try to document that now, for the past few years, these moments in which I am feeling fully embodied, like, within myself, because often I am up in my head. Um, and that's all to say that you may have a completely different relationship with the news or with whatever is going on at the moment. But I do think that it is important to be conscious, just like how we're conscious about the food and the things that we put in our body. We have to be conscious about what we are putting in our mind, what we are paying attention to. These things do affect us. I think that there's consequences to everything. There's consequences to everything. And Yeah, it's really trying to make sure that you don't lose yourself in the chaos of it all. Shit is always going to happen, but is the shit happening to you? It's one thing to it's one thing to have empathy and to care for the people who are going through difficult things. It's another thing to develop a sense of to try to feel their emotions, to develop a sense of like um you can't be okay if everyone in the world isn't okay. Because let's be honest, there's probably never been a time on this planet in which everyone was okay. And so you have to be okay with that. And then you have to figure out in what ways, in what gifts do you have that might make the world a little better, even like a little micron better, right? And put your energy towards that, and I think that that's something in the past few years that has really helped me um to be able to focus my energy on things that I believe help the greater good. All right, those are my thoughts. I hope you enjoyed this podcast, and as always, I appreciate if you leave comments, if you share this podcast. And if any of this resonates with you, I would love to hear from you. My website, thehouseofcanas.com. You could always write to me. There's a little contact form. And until next time, I hope you take care and be well.